Our next topic is psychosocial development. And this is the framework developed by a student of Sigmund Freud's, Erikson. Erikson, obviously a psychoanalyst as well as Freud. And Erikson's framework is in some ways similar to Freud's, in some ways unique. How similar to Freud's? He covers birth to 18 years of age in 5 stages, the same 5 age periods that Freud went over. Also, for Erikson, there was drama in whether the child would negotiate each stage properly. Even more so than with Freud, because as you'll see, in each of Erikson's stages, there is a positive outcome versus a negative outcome. And this underscores the essential drama of each stage, whether the person was going to have a healthy life or not. Erikson is different than Freud in that he believed social relationships were the most important element at each stage in life, rather than a part of the body. And also he's different from Freud in that he took account of adult development. Adult development. In other words, there are 8 stages in Erikson's framework, where there was only 5 in Freud's. Erikson mirrors his mentor's first 5 and then has 3 more. And this presages an interest in adult development that we see in modern developmental psychology. Okay, first stage. Arguably the most important. As we already went over, we're very vulnerable when we're infants, even more so than other primates. And it has to do with our brain and how much development is necessary. And it takes a long time. That's one of the compromises we make for our large brains. So, we are vulnerable during these first 2 years. And because of that, we need the people around us to help us. So when babies are hungry, when they're tired, when they need their diaper changed, when they need to be soothed, when they're scared, all those instances and more, infants need their parents or some caregiver. And what happens is, children at this stage either learn that when I need help, someone's going to help me, or they learn someone's not going to help me. Hopefully it's someone will help me, and in that case they develop a conscience. Not only do they develop in a more healthy fashion because people are helping them, but also they learn as they get older that when other people need help, that it's a good idea to help them out. So they develop a conscience. They develop a social contract with the world. People help each other. That's the way things work. Sort of quid pro quo. Now, if children are abused or neglected, on the other hand, they learn not to trust people. And in this case, excuse me, they then do not develop a conscience, They don't develop a sense of, I should help other people when they're vulnerable. They develop a sense where that has nothing to do with me, or perhaps even a predatory attitude towards people who are vulnerable. And they don't develop this conscience, and they develop, in extreme cases, they develop what we call antisocial personality disorder, which is people who hurt other people or take things from other people and have no feelings of remorse. So, first stage, and also two other words for antisocial personality disorder are psychopath and sociopath. And this is a very serious problem. So this very important stage in life for what's going to come after is what happens in these first 2 years. And you can't really see that in a person, or immediately see it. But that is a great investment, a great service that parents do for the rest of the world, is to treat their children well. Next 3 stages center around a child developing independence, being able to do things on their own, and growing in their own mastery of their environment. Of course, at any stage, it's possible that they don't get to do this, and they could feel one of those things on the right: shame, guilt, or inferiority, all of which are obviously to be avoided. So parents have to be there to help and comfort, but at the same time also give the child room to grow. Okay, then stage 5 is the adolescent stage, and whereas the last 3 stages the child was growing and needed to develop, at this stage it's even more pointed, it's even more important. Adolescence, a person's body changes and now they become mature. It's getting close to time for the person to be on their own and to be at least independent to some degree, and then to start thinking about having their own family. So, identity issues come up. Examples: who the person should be dating or marrying, political affiliation, religious affiliation, choice of career. All of these things parents exert some control over. But according to Erickson, a person needs to grow and develop their own identity during this period of time, so they make their own decisions about major life issues. We're going to look, after we're done with Erickson's 3 adult development stages, we're going to look at an individual who took a look at this stage with greater focus, more detail. Realize, of course, that other cultures, this is not as important as it is in Western culture. Develop your own identity. So whenever I go over this, certain students from whatever culture it might be will say, well, in our culture we don't rebel against or develop our own identity. We pretty much do what our parents want us to do. And so to some degree this is a culturally biased framework. All right, now, adult development. During early adulthood, the conflict is between intimacy versus isolation. Intimacy can mean a number of things. The most clear manifestation of intimacy is romantic relationships and perhaps marriage. If you're unable to form intimate relationships, it leads to isolation. Then in middle adulthood, Erickson uses a word that you probably never see anywhere other than his theory: generativity versus stagnation. Generativity refers to generation, or at this point, you're in your middle adulthood. Are you passing along anything to the next generation? Excuse me. As we all know, we're born to die eventually. But the way to be immortal is to pass some of yourself on. The most salient, most obvious way to do this is to pass your genes along by having children. And that's what Erickson focused on. There are other ways as well, but somehow to pass along something to the next generation. And finally, in late adulthood, can you look back on your life and feel proud of the way you lived your life? Are you happy with it? Or do you have regrets? Things that plague you. Oh, I should have done this. If you live without regrets, that's ego integrity. If you do have regrets, that's despair. So crucial that at each, and it's important to realize at each stage of your life, and it's always to take a chance or not, but to live your life with integrity. Don't live in fear. And thus, this all comes to a head in late adulthood, according to Erickson, when you look back at your life. All right, now the promised focus on, that's Erickson's theory. Now the focus on that one stage, that adolescent identity stage, which this researcher by the name of Marcia calls identity crisis. Okay. Marcia broke down the movement towards identity into 4 stages. First, there's identity diffusion. Now imagine those 4 examples I just gave a couple of minutes ago. Adolescents, early adults in crisis about who they're going to marry, do they believe what their parents believe in terms of religion, in terms of politics. Do you see things the way your parents see them? And career. Are you going to do what your parents want you to do, or go your own way? Identity diffusion means all these things are pending. They're all crises. You haven't figured out what you want to do yet. But you're not in the midst, like you're not in the acute stage of any of them. You're not really focusing on any one of them at the moment. Then moratorium comes, whenever this might be, for whichever one of these crises. Moratorium means now you're focused. You're going through a crisis, or a decision-making time. What am I going to do? And I need to make my decision now. It's important. That's called moratorium. And then Marcia said there's one of 2 outcomes. Foreclosure, which means you decide not to pursue your own identity, and you're going to behave and think according to what your parents and others think you should do. Obviously, there's a very negative connotation to that for Marcia. Or the more positive, identity achievement. And identity achievement is you fight through, and you know, a lot of times it's painful to go your own way, as Marcia would point out, but you develop your own sense of autonomy and your own identity. And this was the goal as far as Marcia was concerned. Okay, so that's psychosocial development.